The woman my wife could never get over, her first love, had abandoned her for an elegant, dazzling heiress. Years later, he was going through a nasty divorce and needed a lawyer. My wife, as it happened, was a lawyer. The moment she walked back toward him, I knew I had lost. It was 2 weeks after her college reunion that Ava asked me for a divorce. What are you talking about? I couldn't believe it. We had been married for 3 years, deeply in love. Just a few days ago, we had excitedly told our parents we were going to start trying for a baby. Ava looked exhausted. She wouldn't meet my eyes, her gaze fixed on the floor as she spoke slowly. It's just temporary. I can't just leave him like this. Him. She didn't say his name, but I knew exactly who she meant. The one who got away. The ghost of the man who had abandoned her. Julian is in a really bad place, she explained. His marriage has fallen apart, but his wife won't agree to a divorce. It's turning into a huge legal battle, and he's living all alone. We have history. After all, we dated. He's hit rock bottom, and I'm the only one who can help him now. I was silent for a moment before asking, he's getting a divorce, and he wants you to be his attorney? Ava nodded. His wife's family is powerful. This case is going to be incredibly difficult, us getting a divorce. It's just to protect you. In the future, she trailed off, as if wanting to say more, but I cut her off. So, I guess I should thank you for being so considerate. The sarcasm in my voice must have been sharp, because Ava's breath hitched. She didn't speak for a long time. I stood up, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Fine, I said. Let's get a divorce. Ava shot to her feet, her voice tight with anxiety. Where are you going? It's so late. From this moment on, we have nothing to do with each other. I left her with those words and walked straight toward the door. But as my hand touched the knob, I couldn't stop myself. I turned back, my gaze locking on hers. Do you remember what happened after Julian dumped you? Do you remember how badly his new girlfriend and her friends beat you? Ava, you told me back then. You swore you would make the people who abandoned you pay. The door clicked shut, hiding the sudden paleness of Ava's face. It also cut off the rest of my sentence. Ava, are you really that charitable, or are you just a glutton for punishment? Ava and I were practically childhood friends. Growing up, she was brilliant and beautiful. Even though her family struggled financially, boys were always drawn to her. I watched her throw every love letter she received into the trash, telling me with an annoyed sigh that she had no interest in dating. They were all just a nuisance. From then on, I kept my distance, burying my own youthful crush deep inside. It was only later that I learned there was an exception to her rule. That exception was Julian Croft. Julian was handsome, but it was a dangerous kind of handsome. He cornered Ava between classes one day and asked her if she wanted to try something exciting. Ava looked away, flustered, but in the next second, he hooked an arm around her neck and planted a kiss on her lips. Seeing her face flush crimson, Julian smirked. You blush so easily. Let's go out. At that moment, I was standing at the other end of the hall, holding a lunchbox Ava's mom had asked me to bring her. I watched, stunned, as the girl I liked chose someone else. The only way I could express my anger was by picking all the meat out of her lunch before I gave it to her. Not that she cared. Her world had shrunk to a single point. Julian, and the thrilling rush of a new romance. I had a good cry and decided to let her go. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. They broke up quickly. Once the novelty wore off, Julian kicked her to the curb without a second thought. He moved on to the new transfer student, a wealthy heiress who would later become his wife. The heiress's family had power and influence. They could give him everything he wanted. Ava refused to accept that it was over. She went after him again and again, until the heiress found out. That's when the bullying started. Ava's father had died young, and she was raised by a single mother. We were poor, and my family often had to help them out. How could she possibly stand up to a girl with that kind of money and power? I still remember the day we graduated high school. Everyone was out celebrating, but I was searching the rain-slicked streets for her. I finally found her in a dark alley, barely conscious. Her SAT admission ticket had been torn to shreds and thrown on the ground. Her body was a canvas of bruises, her face swollen. The moment she saw me, she threw her arms around me, her whole body trembling. They tried to ruin me. Ava seethed through clenched teeth. I swear, I will make the people who abandoned me pay. All I could do was try to comfort her. Everything's going to be okay. She suddenly looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. Caleb, she said, her voice raw. You're all I have left. I looked away then, saying softly, I'll wait for you to take your gap year. I didn't want to take advantage of her when she was vulnerable, and I refused to be anyone's replacement. I was so careful, so cautious. I waited until she spent a year studying, got accepted into my university, and then pursued me for 3 solid years. I finally know what I missed out on, she told me once, her eyes so full of sincerity that I finally decided to take a chance. It felt like the perfect ending to a story. 7 years later, it was time for our college reunion. A week beforehand, Ava bought me an expensive suit, a whole ensemble that cost a fortune. I couldn't help but laugh. "This is a bit much, don't you think? I just want everyone to know how happy you are as my husband," she said. But a last-minute emergency came up at work, and I couldn't make it. Ava was furious. While I was in a meeting, she called me repeatedly. When I didn't pick up, she started bombarding me with texts. "Caleb, we're about to start trying for a baby. Can't you just quit that stupid job? This is our college reunion. So many old friends ago to be here. What do you want people to think of me?" I took a deep breath and typed back as quickly as I could. "Ava, I am not a trophy for you to show off." Her last text was, "What's more important, your job or our marriage?" I turned my phone off. But late that night, after the meeting finally ended, I got a call from another classmate. Ava was drunk, passed out at the restaurant. A wave of panic washed over me. Exhausted and hungry as I was, I grabbed a cab and rushed over. She was indeed very drunk. The moment she saw me, her eyes reddened, and she collapsed in my arms, murmuring into my neck, "Honey, I'm here." My heart ached for her. I struggled to help her up. "Come on, let's go home." The next thing I knew, she retched, throwing up all over my pants and shoes. I sucked in a sharp breath and, without another thought, wrestled her into the back of the cab. We needed to get home immediately. Just then, a sleek figure emerged from the restaurant. She left her wallet. I took it without looking, mumbled my thanks, and tried to close the door, but he held it open. "So you're her husband?" The challenge in his voice was so obvious that my head snapped up. The neon lights of the distant street flickered, casting a multicolored glow on the man standing before me. 7 years had passed. He was even more polished now, his short hair falling artfully over his eyes. As he moved his hand, an expensive watch gleamed on his wrist. "Julian," I said, certain my smile was painfully awkward. "Long time no see. How can not be awkward?" I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, a haggard, exhausted face after a long day at work, my clothes stained with vomit. 7 damn years. And every time I saw him, I felt like a loser. Thankfully, Ava broke the silence. She seemed to have sobered up a little, or maybe not. She just leaned her head on my shoulder and mumbled my name. "Honey, Caleb, I shouldn't have called you," she slurred. "I shouldn't have bothered you at work. Please don't be mad at me, okay?" My heart melted. I knew what this was all about. When I had decided to be with her, my friends and family were all against it because of her family's financial situation. So for years, Ava had fought tooth and nail to climb the ladder, desperate to prove that she wasn't marrying up. She wanted me to quit my job, to show up at important events dressed to the nines, all to prove her own worth. Those first few years were tough. We lived in a damp basement apartment where the ceiling leaked every time it rained. We'd set out little red plastic bowls to catch the drips and hold each other in the darkness, listening to the steady plink, plink, plink. In those days, when our pockets were empty, I was happier than most people could imagine. She cooked for me every day, came to my office with an umbrella on rainy days, and did everything in her power to love me. She wasn't the perfect girlfriend, but she was the girl whose eyes and heart were filled with nothing but me. Love, we thought, could conquer all. At that moment, in the back of the cab, as she held me and called me her husband, those words echoed in my mind again. So I looked up, gave Julian a genuine smile, and said, "Yeah, we've been together for 7 years. We're very happy." Julian's expression faltered, a flicker of something lost in his eyes. I breathed a sigh of relief. On the way home, I held Ava's hand the entire time. But in the end, she still made me lose. Completely and utterly. The divorce was happening. I was such a good guy. After all, I was going to stand by her while she saved Julian. We hired lawyers to handle the division of assets. The whole process was long and complicated. It was funny, really. When we got married, we moved into this house with nothing, building our life from scratch, doing everything ourselves. We were so happy then, always dreaming about the future. Now, years later, here we were, sitting across from each other with a long list of assets, all for the sake of splitting up. Ava sat at the table, her expression weary and distant. After the meeting, I stepped out onto the balcony for some air. I was scrolling through my phone when I saw a message from an old classmate I hadn't spoken to in years. She had sent a video. Her voice message was filled with unease. "I debated for a long time whether to send this to you. I was worried it would ruin things between you two, but I think there are some things you just have to know." The video was shaky, but I could tell it was filmed at the restaurant from the reunion. In a narrow fire escape, two figures were pressed intimately together. Julian's voice was a low murmur, intoxicating. All these years. Have you missed me? Ava, her face flushed, pushed weakly against his chest. Julian pressed on. Me or Caleb? Who's better? I'm married to him now. That boring guy. Is he really right for you? Julian leaned in and kissed her, his movements bold and unapologetic. Ava didn't pull away. When the kiss ended, Julian was breathing heavily, his arms wrapped possessively around her. Ava, he said, as soon as my divorce is finalized. There is no... Ava cut him off then, her voice clear and rational, as if she'd suddenly snapped back to reality. I have a responsibility to Caleb. She turned to walk away. Ava, Julian called out after her. I've thought about you every single day for years. I regret everything. What about you? Are you telling me you haven't thought about me once? Stop lying to yourself. Ava stopped for a long moment. As Julian's voice cracked with emotion, she stood frozen. Then, she spun around and walked back to him. Her eyes were red-rimmed as she stood on her toes and kissed his lips. It was a full 15 minutes before I went back inside. The lawyer was gone. The only person left in the vast, empty room was Ava. What took you so long out there? She asked, gathering the documents on the table. This is the asset division agreement we just finalized this afternoon. I didn't even glance at it. I stood in the middle of the room and said slowly, I want to renegotiate the agreement. The house, the cars, everything from our shared assets. I'm not leaving you a single dime. Ava stared at me, stunned. A bitter, disbelieving smile touched her lips. Caleb, do you really have to make this so ugly? It's been 7 years. Once this is all over, we can still be together, can't we? So she did remember it had been 7 years. I leaned forward, planting my hands on the table, and stared directly into her eyes. Don't disgust me. Every extra second I have to spend with you makes me want to vomit. 7 years of love. Every piece of furniture in this house was something we had picked out together, arranged together. But looking at them now, even the memories felt tainted and hideous. I didn't show Ava the video. I needed to keep one card up my sleeve. If she tried to give me any trouble with the asset division, I would hand the video over to my lawyer. As for her cheating, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Maybe the moment she asked for a divorce, my feelings for her had already withered away, leaving nothing behind. I'm a decent person. I didn't want to drag myself through the mud for a woman like her. In the end, though, our separation was anything but peaceful. On the third day after we decided to divorce, Julian's wife showed up with a crew of thugs and trashed our home. This heiress, Diana Vance, came from a family of well-known local entrepreneurs, but rumor had it they didn't play clean. In the early days, they'd used violence and intimidation to crush their competitors. I don't know how she found out that Ava had decided to get involved in Julian's mess, but that night, she sent a group of young thugs to smash our windows. I was asleep in the master bedroom. Ava had already been banished to the guest room. I wasn't moving out until the house's ownership was settled to prevent her from quietly moving assets. The moment it happened, shards of glass flew into the room, nearly cutting me. Ava was the first one inside. The thugs hurled a few bricks through the windows, one of which struck Ava on the head. I trembled, looking down at my hand. It was covered in Ava's blood. The thugs scattered as quickly as they'd appeared. I immediately called the police. When I looked up, Ava was getting dressed, preparing to leave. Ava, my voice cracked. Where the hell are you going? A flicker of guilt crossed her face, but she still said, It's fine, they wouldn't dare go too far. You should hide in the bathroom. I'll be back soon. In the dead of night, I stood alone in front of the shattered, gaping window. Ava, I clenched my fists, fighting back a wave of rage and fear. Are you sure you want to walk out that door? Ava didn't even turn around. She just left me with one sentence. I'm sorry. Julian needs me more than you do right now. I don't know how I made it through those next few hours. The police arrived, and I answered their questions calmly. When Ava finally returned, Julian was with her. He looked completely unharmed. He held Ava's arm tightly and even had the audacity to flash me a smug, triumphant smile. Caleb, the moment Ava saw me, she shook Julian off and ran toward me, her voice frantic. Her head wound was still untreated, dried blood caked on the side of her face. She looked both pathetic and absurd. Are you okay? She started to ask. Her words were cut short by the sound of my hand cracking across her face. I had put every ounce of my strength into it. She stumbled back, caught completely off guard. The impact split the wound on her head open again, and fresh blood began to trickle down her temple. I stared into her eyes, my chest heaving. You, I said, each word laced with venom, are a piece of human garbage. Pain contorted her features. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Julian, however, sauntered over, a snide look on his face. Mr. Hayes, you can't just hit people. She was just worried about me. You're misunderstanding the situation. With my other hand, I slapped him just as hard. Caleb, are you crazy? Julian cried out. I am crazy, I sneered. Mail me the divorce papers. Looking at you two scumbags for one more second makes me sick. Even that wasn't enough. I lunged forward, grabbing a fistful of Julian's collar. Another man's wife? Is that it? Is that what gets you off? Is it fun? Julian's face twisted in pain. No, he choked out. I just asked her for help. Is that so? Out of all the lawyers in the city, you just had to find your successful ex-girlfriend? You really think people are that stupid? But you know what? It doesn't matter, I said, shoving him away in disgust. You like digging through the trash? Fine. She's all yours. With that, I turned to leave. Caleb, can't you just calm down? Ava tried to block my path, but I shoved her aside forcefully. You pathetic doormat. I spat, looking down at her. Get out of my way. Both of you, get the hell out of my sight. The divorce papers arrived a few days later. I signed them without hesitation and mailed them back the same day. The day I got my copy of the finalized divorce decree, even the air felt cleaner. I took a picture of it and posted it in our old college group chat, making sure to tag both Julian and Ava. The caption read, "Finally free. Congratulations to Mr. Croft on the promotion. Wishing you two a long and happy life together. Don't ever break up." They had shown no decency, so I saw no reason to give them any face. The group chat exploded. What's going on? Julian is a homewrecker? Ava cheated? Julian sent a series of frantic 60-second voice messages. I didn't even have the desire to listen to them. Ava, unable to hide from the flood of tags, could only offer a lame defense. It's not like that. We separated amicably. I opened the voice note feature and recorded my reply. Go to hell. The chat went dead silent. I took an extended leave from work and went on a trip to clear my head. How many 7-year periods does a person get in life? I desperately needed a way to purge the bitterness from my soul. It wasn't peak tourist season, so it wasn't crowded. The weather was beautiful, and I had a great time exploring on my own. There was a young woman in my tour group who took a few pictures of me with her camera. She showed them to me, asking, "What do you think?" I was genuinely moved. I looked up at her and said sincerely, "They're beautiful." "Thank you." She smiled, revealing a cute little canine tooth. "Can I trade this picture for your number?" I looked at her again, really looked at her this time, and chuckled. "I'm afraid that's a tough trade." "That's okay," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. "The trip's not over yet." For the rest of the tour, she was constantly taking pictures of me. While I was away, enjoying myself, the divorce proceedings between Julian and Diana began. On my way back, as soon as I got off the plane, a friend sent me a photo. Outside the courthouse, Diana stood with an air of arrogant indifference. Ava was in front of her, and behind them, Julian looked completely drained. My friend added a message. "You should have seen it. Diana was so brazen. I heard she's been harassing Ava's law firm, trying to get her fired, then trying to bribe her. Ava's having a really rough time." I didn't much care, but that night, a comment from Ava appeared under one of my travel photos. She had asked, "Who took this for you?" I didn't reply. What business was it of hers? When I checked my phone again after dinner, she had deleted the question and left a new comment. "Hope you're having a good time." Later, I received a voice message from her. For the first 30 seconds, it was mostly the sound of wind and static. Then at the very end, her drunken voice came through. "Caleb, the house is so quiet now. I'm so tired. Every single day. No one supports me. No one believes in me. It feels like I'm back where I started." I listened to the voicemail in silence. Then, feeling thoroughly disgusted, I blocked her number. I could picture her perfectly. While I was off traveling and healing, she was still living in that house with the shattered windows. After the asset division, I had been true to my word. I hadn't left her so much as a single rug. A major setback in her career would easily remind her of the days just after graduation, when no one believed she could make it as a lawyer, when no one saw any potential in her. Except for me. I had believed in her unconditionally. I supported her, encouraged her. When her boss forced her to go to networking dinners and she drank until she had stomach bleeding, I was the one who made her hangover remedies and took her to the hospital. When no one would hire her, I went with her door to door, bowing deeply beside her as we begged them to give her a chance. When she won her first case, I spent half a month's salary on a gift to celebrate. There were so many moments like that, too many to count. It was only much later that I finally understood. You can't ever love a girl who doesn't love you back. Now that she had hit rock bottom again, she remembered how good I had been to her. But that couldn't change the fact that she had abandoned me the moment she found success. 7 years of my life, all down the drain. She felt nostalgic. I just felt sick. On the last day of my trip, the young photographer finally got my contact information. It was only after we connected that I realized she was still a student. Her name was Chloe, a grad student who did photography as a hobby. The way she nervously asked if I had a girlfriend was adorable, but I just gently patted her on the head and said, "You're still too young, kid." Chloe looked thoroughly unconvinced. "We'll see about that," she said. I just shrugged. People change. I had learned that lesson the hard way with Ava. It was a shame she hadn't learned it herself. The day I got back home, I was juggling my luggage and a phone call from a friend as I left the airport. The situation had taken a dramatic turn. Julian had decided not to get divorced after all. It was a long story, but the short version was that he and Ava had been photographed in a compromising position. It happened around the same day. Ava sent me that drunken voicemail. The two of them were at a bar, went home together, and, fueled by alcohol, ended up in bed. At some point during the night, Ava must have had a moment of clarity and sent me that sad message, only to be blocked. In any case, Diana's people had caught them. With photos in hand, Diana agreed to the divorce. She was more than happy to let the two lovebirds be together, on one condition: Julian wouldn't get a single penny. I'm sure that for a fleeting moment, a fool like Ava actually felt a sense of responsibility toward Julian. Until Julian refused. "I don't get a dime," he had demanded, incredulous. "Then what the hell did I hire you for?" Ava was even more stunned. "You said you were being abused, that you couldn't stand it anymore, and just wanted to be free of her." "You idiot. Did you really think I was getting a divorce for you? I did it for the money. You're just as stupid and naive as you've always been. Pathetic." Julian's face was a mask of fury. From the very beginning, his only goal had been to get a piece of Diana's fortune. Ava was, without a doubt, a complete fool. She stood there, frozen for a long, long time. Just as Julian was about to storm out, she finally managed to ask in a trembling voice, "Then what does that make me?" "A colossal dumbass," I said mercilessly into the phone. My friend on the other end burst out laughing. "The things you can't have always seem better, more desirable. It's only when you finally get them that you realize how rotten they truly are." In high school, Julian had her wrapped around his little finger. All he had to do was beckon, and she would come running, heart in hand. I never imagined the same scene would play out again all these years later. But what could I say? She brought it on herself. "Still, you should be careful," my friend warned. "She knows you're flying in today." I didn't hear the rest of his sentence. I had already spotted Ava's face in the crowd waiting at arrivals. She looked haggard, her dress wrinkled as if it hadn't been ironed in days. Her face was pale, her eyes vacant. She offered to drive me home. I got into the back seat and watched as she instinctively started driving toward our old address. "Wrong way," I said, my voice flat. Ava was silent for a moment before asking, "Where are you living now?" I gave her the address. It was a small condo I had bought before we got married. Not the best location, but the deed was in my name only. It was my own small, private space. "Are you comfortable there?" Ava asked. Of course I was comfortable, now that the person who disgusted me was gone. It was such a stupid question, I didn't even bother to answer. We arrived at my building quickly. I didn't even want to offer a polite goodbye. I just wanted to get out, but when I pulled the handle, the door wouldn't open. I tried a few more times. Nothing. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "I'm not comfortable," she said, her eyes turning red as she slowly turned to face me. "Caleb, a life without you. I'm not comfortable at all." I watched her performance with utter boredom. "And," she faltered, then pressed on, "come back, Caleb, please." Julian lied to me. "They've ruined my career. They send thugs to harass me every few days. I can't sleep. I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Every night, all I can do is think of you. I realize now that you were the only one who would ever support me, who would ever help me, no matter what." I was silent for a long time. The air in the car was so thick it felt hard to breathe. Finally, I spoke. "The first time, Julian abandoned you. You came to me, pursued me for 3 years, and I finally said yes. We went through so much together. When you were poor, when you were at your lowest, I was the one by your side. Then you became successful, and you still chose to divorce me for him. Now, because of him, you've hit rock bottom again. And this is when you decide you want me back. Ava, do I look like a fool to you?" Ava's expression was one of pure humiliation. "You don't have to be so cruel," she said. "We didn't get divorced because our love died. You're the only one in my heart. I never, not for a second, truly wanted to be apart from you. Why can't you give me another chance?" Her words were so absurd I had to laugh. And so I did. "When you were making out with Julian at the reunion," I asked through my laughter, "did it ever occur to you that this day might come?" Ava's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? I simply pulled out my phone, found the video, and shoved it in her face. Ava, you cheated on me. Don't you dare talk to me about love. You have some nerve. A look of agony crossed her face, and she gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. It wasn't like that, she stammered. It was Julian. He started it. It was the same way it was back then. I could have had a wonderful life, a happy marriage, someone who loved me. It was all Julian. He keeps coming back, messing with me. He ruined me, Caleb. I never even loved him. I know. I cut her off, my face a blank mask. You just bitter you couldn't have him. Ava looked relieved, as if she'd been thrown a lifeline. She reached for my hand, but I continued, my voice cold. A selfish, greedy, and insatiable person like you isn't capable of loving anyone. The slightest temptation and you fold. It doesn't matter if it's Julian or me, the guy who stood by you at your worst. You're just a pathetic creature who only loves herself. Disloyal, always chasing the next thrill to soothe your fragile ego. You know, Ava, I should probably thank Julian. Thanks to him, I got to see your true colors sooner rather than later. Divorcing you was the best decision I've ever made in my life. My words cut her deeper than any knife. She stared at me, her hands trembling. How could you? She asked, her voice desperate. Caleb, we were together for 7 years. How could you just let go of something that deep? Precisely because it was 7 years, I said, enunciating each word. Let's not make the end any uglier than it has to be. When she was at her lowest, we were deeply in love. As she became more and more successful, she started to believe that love was indestructible. She took everything for granted, convinced that no matter what she did to me, I would always forgive her, that she could never lose me. So she cloaked her infidelity in a shroud of self-righteousness, thinking she could win back her first love, settle old scores, and then come back and smooth things over with me, keeping her marriage intact. Nothing would change. She wanted it all, but you can't have it all. Ava, you once said something to me when you were trying to win me over. Now, I'm giving it back to you. You will never know what you've lost. Ava completely fell apart. That day, she apologized to me over and over again. After I finally got back to my apartment, I looked down from my balcony and saw her car was still parked on the street. It didn't leave until late into the night. I don't know how much of her apology was sincere, and I don't care. When I loved her, I gave my all. When I stopped loving her, I walked away without hesitation. With every choice I made, I could live with myself. As for her, she would get what was coming to her. Ava was still young. Even without a job, she had a chance to start over. Unfortunately, the double blow of Julian's second betrayal and my departure had pushed her over the edge. She became obsessed. I heard she started investigating Diana Vance again, not for Julian this time, but purely for revenge. The Vance family's business dealings were indeed shady, and there was a long line of victims, but no one had ever dared to dig too deep. The Vance family pushed back hard. At one point, she was being chased and beaten by thugs on the street. Financially, she had already lost most of her assets in our divorce. After losing her job, things got even worse. Soon, she had to sell her car, then her condo, until she had nothing left. Julian once went to her and begged her to stop, pointing out that if she kept going, she would be dragged down too. Ava seemingly agreed. That year, on their wedding anniversary, Diane and Julian threw a massive party, inviting all sorts of high society figures. They had planned to show a promotional video for the Vance Corporation during the event. But when the projector flickered on, the guests were treated to a video of the esteemed Mrs. Vance's husband, Julian Croft, locked in a passionate embrace with Ava Monroe in a stairwell. I heard the party descended into chaos. Diana nearly beat Julian to death in front of everyone. The instigator, Ava, did not escape unscathed. Someone was sent to retaliate, and she ended up with a broken arm. But even that didn't stop her. The following year, she finally succeeded in putting Diana Vance in prison. Tax evasion, illegal profiteering. All of their assets were frozen and confiscated. That day she called me. Unfortunately, I wasn't near my phone. The person who answered was Chloe. A while back, I never would have imagined I'd end up with a kid like Chloe. But the heart is a strange thing. She was sincere and warm, and her affection was like a slow, steady stream that gradually wore down my defenses. Us getting together just felt natural. Chloe relayed the contents of the phone call to me. She said the woman on the other end sounded ecstatic, almost manic, excitedly asking if I would give her another chance now that she had made them all pay, just like before. She sounded so disappointed when she heard my voice. Chloe told me. I was about to tell her to call back later, but then it suddenly got really chaotic on her end. I found out what happened later from other friends. Julian, Having lost everything, had snapped. He bought a fruit knife and stabbed Ava. Did she die? I asked, curious. I don't think so, my friend said. But she's in a miserable state. Diana's people broke her arm before she went to prison. She has no job, no money. I heard she's in the hospital with stab wounds, and there's not a single person there for her. Chloe, who was listening to the call with me, asked softly, "Are you going to go see her?" I smiled and shook my head. What happens to her has nothing to do with me. A broken mirror can't be made whole again. No matter what she did, she could never undo the damage she had caused. Besides, I had someone more important in my life now. I wouldn't let one failed relationship rob me of my ability to love, nor would I let it keep me from moving forward. My future was just getting started,